Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Raven's Readings. I will be reading to you from the Tower Treasure. It's from 1927, the first in a series of Hardy Boys novels written under the pseudonym Franklin W. Dixon. The two teenage boys, Frank and Joe, worked together as a detective team, amateurs still, but occasionally assisting their father, Fenton Hardy, a private investigator. Last episode, their friend Chet's stolen roadster was found, but now there's a new crime, a robbery at Tower Mansion. Are the events related? I do readings twice a week. If you subscribe to my Substack newsletter, you'll get notified of my updates as soon as they're ready. If you enjoy this reading or have other classics you'd like to hear, leave me a comment. Chapter 7. The Mansion Robbery. Tower Mansion was one of the showplaces of Bayport. Few people in the city had ever been permitted to enter the place, and the admiration the palatial building excited was solely by reason of its exterior appearance. But the first thing every newcomer to Bayport usually asked was, who owns that magnificent house on the hill? It was an immense rambling stone structure situated on the top of the hill overlooking the bay, and it could be seen for miles, silhouetted against the skyline like some ancient feudal castle. This resemblance to a castle was heightened by the fact that at each end of the mansion rose a high tower. One of these towers had been built when the mansion was first erected by Major Applegate, an eccentric old army man who had made millions by lucky real estate deals and had laid the foundation for the Applegate fortune. The mansion had been the admiration of its day, and in its time had seen much gaiety. But as the years passed, the Applegate family became scattered, until at last there remained but Herd Applegate and his sister Adelia, who continued living in the vast and lonely old mansion. Herd Applegate was a man of about 60 years of age. He was a tall, stooped man, eccentric in his ways, and his life seemed to be devoted now to the collection of rare stamps. He was an authority on the subject, and nothing else in life appeared to hold a great deal of interest to him. The only visitors at Tower Mansion were philatelists from New York, or experts desirous of appraising some new stamp that Herd Applegate had managed to secure from some remote part of the world. It had often been said in Bayport that Herd Applegate had accomplished only two things in life. He had collected stamps, and he'd built a new tower on the mansion. The new tower, a duplicate of the original tower at the opposite end of the great building, had been built but a few years ago, even well within the memory of the two Hardy boys. Adelia Applegate, who lived in the Tower Mansion with her brother, was a lady of uncertain years. The records in Bayport City Hall gave her age at 55, but Miss Applegate admitted it to no one. She was as eccentric as her brother and lived very much to herself, being seldom seen in the city. She was at one time a blonde, but she'd endeavored to retain her youth by dyeing her hair, with the result that was now a sort of dusty black. Chet Morton was fond of saying, Miss Applegate used to be a blonde, but she died. She dressed in all colors of the rainbow, and her infrequent excursions into Bayport stores, when she would order the clerks about like so many soldiers, shouting at them in her high-cracked voice, had become historic on account of the wild and colorful garments she would carry off with her. These eccentric people were reputed to be enormously wealthy, although they lived simply and kept only a few servants. So when Herd Applegate came into the Bayport police station that afternoon and reported that the safe in his library had been broken open and that it had been robbed of all its securities and jewels it contained, the rumors that soon spread about the city magnified the actual loss, until it became common talk that the loss amounted anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million. When Frank and Joe Hardy arrived home that evening, they met Herd Applegate just leaving the house. The man tapped the steps with his cane as he came out, and when he met the boys, he gave them an abrupt and piercing glance. "Good day," he growled in a grudging manner, and went on his way. "He must have been asking Dad to take up the case," said Frank to his brother as soon as Herd Applegate was out of the earshot. They hurried into the house, eager to find out more about the robbery, and in the hallway they met Fenton Hardy, who had just seen Mr. Applegate to the door. "I hear the Tower Mansion was robbed," said Joe. Mr. Hardy nodded. "Yes, Mr. Applegate was just here. He wants me to handle the case." "How much was taken?" "Oh, quite curious, aren't you?" remarked Mr. Hardy with a smile. "Well, I don't suppose it will do any harm to tell you. The safe in the Applegate library was open. The loss will be about $40,000, I believe." "We heard it was over 100,000, exclaimed Joe. "Well, rumors always exaggerate," said his father. $40,000 is the figure Mr. Applegate puts it at, and it's quite enough, too, all in securities and jewels." "Whew!" exclaimed Frank. "Quite a haul. When did it happen?" "Either last night or this morning. He did not get up until after 10 o'clock this morning, and he didn't get into the library until noon. Then he discovered the theft." "Well, how was the safe opened?" "It was either opened by someone who knew the combination or else by a very clever crook. It wasn't dynamited at all. I'm going up to the house in a few minutes. Mr. Applegate is going to call for me." "Can't we go along?" asked Joe eagerly. Mr. Hardy looked at his sons with a smile. "Well, if you are so anxious to be detectives, I suppose it's about as good a chance as any to watch a crime investigation from the inside. If Mr. Applegate doesn't object, I suppose you may come along." In a few minutes, an automobile drew up before the Hardy home. Mr. Applegate was sitting in the rear seat, resting his chin on his cane. When Mr. Hardy mentioned the boy's request, he merely grunted assent, so Joe and Frank clambered into the car with their father. They were tremendously excited at the prospect of being on the inside in the mysterious case. While the car bowled along over the city roads toward the Tower Mansion that was gloomily silhouetted against the sky, Mr. Hardy and Mr. Applegate discussed the robbery. "I don't really need a detective in this case," snapped Herd Applegate. "Don't need one at all. It's as clear as the nose on your face. I know who took the stuff, but I can't prove it." "Well, whom do you suspect?" asked Fenton Hardy. "Only one man in the world could have taken it. Robinson." "Robinson?" "Yes. Henry Robinson, the caretaker. He's the man." The Hardy boys looked at one another in consternation. Henry Robinson, the caretaker of the Tower Mansion, was the father of one of their closest chums. Perry Robinson, nicknamed Slim, was to have accompanied them on their jaunt to the woods that day, but had failed to appear. The reason was now evident. But that Henry Robinson should be accused of the robbery seemed absurd. The boy had met Slim's father, and he had appeared to them as a good-natured, easy-going man, the soul of truth and honesty. "I don't believe it," whispered Frank. "Neither do I," returned his brother. "What makes you suspect Robinson?" asked Mr. Hardy of Herd Applegate. "Well, he's the only person besides my sister and me who ever saw that safe opened and closed. He could have learned the combination if he kept his eyes and ears open. I believe he did." "But is that your only reason for suspecting him?" "Well, more than that. This morning he paid off a note at the bank. It was a note for $900. I know for a fact that he didn't have more than $100 to his name a few days ago. The Robinsons have been hard up, for they had sickness in the family last winter, and Henry Robinson has had a hard time meeting his debts since then. Now, where did he raise $900 so suddenly?" "Perhaps he has a good explanation," said Mr. Hardy mildly. "It doesn't do to jump at conclusions." "Oh, he'll have an explanation all right," sniffed Mr. Applegate. "But it'll have to be a mighty good one to satisfy me." Joe whispered in his brother's ear. "Luckily, he'll not have to satisfy Mr. Applegate, but will have to convince a jury, if it gets that far." The automobile was speeding up the wide driveway that led to Tower Mansion, and within a few minutes it drew up at the front entrance. Mr. Applegate dismissed the driver, and Mr. Hardy and the two boys accompanied the eccentric man into the house. Nothing had been disturbed in the library since the discovery of the theft. Mr. Hardy examined the open safe, then drew a magnifying glass from his pocket and with minute care inspected the dial of the combination lock. Then he examined the windows, the doorknobs, all places where there might be fingerprints. At last he shook his head. "Smooth job," he observed. "The fellow must have worn gloves. Not a fingerprint in the room." "No need of looking for fingerprints," said Applegate. "It was Robinson. That's who it was." "Better send for him," advised Mr. Hardy. "I'd like to ask him a few questions." Mr. Applegate rang for one of the servants and instructed him to tell Mr. Robinson he was wanted in the library at once. Mr. Hardy glanced at the boys. Better wait in the hallway, he suggested. I want to ask some questions, and it might embarrass Mr. Robinson if you were here. The lads readily withdrew, and in the hallway they met Henry Robinson, the caretaker, and his son Perry. Mr. Robinson was calm but pale, and at the doorway he patted his son on the shoulder. "Don't worry, son," he said. "It'll be all right." With that, he entered the library. Slim Robinson turned to his two chums. "My dad is innocent," he cried. End of chapter. Chapter 8. The Arrest. There was something in Perry Robinson's tone that made Frank and Joe extremely sorry for their chum, for it seemed that the boy realized that the case looked black against his father. Although the Hardy boys realized that it was only natural that Perry should stand up for his father, they shared some of his conviction that Mr. Robinson was not guilty. "Of course he's innocent," agreed Frank. "He'll be able to clear himself all right, Perry." "But everything looks pretty black against him," said Perry, who was pale and shaken. "Unless your father can catch the real thief, I'm afraid Dad will be blamed for it." "Everybody knows your father is honest," said Joel consolingly. "He has a good record. Even Applegate will have to admit that." "Well, a good record won't help him very much if he's blamed for this and can't clear himself. And Dad admits that he did know the combination of the safe." "He knew it?" "Accidentally. He was cleaning the library fireplace one day when he found a slip of paper with numbers marked on it on the floor. The combination was so simple that anyone could remember it if he read it at once. Dad didn't realize what it was until he had studied it a while, and then he put it back on Mr. Applegate's desk. The window was open, and the breeze had blown the paper to the floor." "Does Applegate know that?" "Not yet, but Dad is going to tell him now. He says he knows it will look bad for him, but he's going to tell the truth about it. He knew the combination, although of course he would never think of using it." From the library came the dull hum of voices. The harsh tones of Herd Applegate occasionally arose above the murmur of the conversation, and once the boys heard Mr. Robinson's voice rise sharply. "I didn't do it. I tell you, I didn't take the money." "Then where did you get the $900 you paid on that note?" demanded Mr. Applegate. There was silence for a while. "Where'd you get it?" "I'm not at liberty to tell you." "You won't tell?" "I can't." "Why not?" "I got the money honestly. That's all I can say about it." "Oh, ho!" exclaimed Applegate. "You got the money honestly, yet you can't tell me where it came from. That's very likely, isn't it? If you got it honestly, you shouldn't be ashamed to tell me where you got it." "I'm not ashamed, but I'm not at liberty to tell." "Mighty funny thing that you should get $900 so quickly. You were pretty hard up last week, weren't you? Had to ask for an advance on your month's wages." "Yes, I admit it." "And then the day of this robbery, you suddenly have $900 that you can't explain." Mr. Hardy's calm voice broke in. Of course, I don't like to pry into your private affairs, Mr. Robinson," he said, "but it would be best if you could clear up this matter of the money. You must admit yourself that it doesn't look promising." "I know it looks bad," replied the caretaker doggedly, "but I can't tell you where that money came from." "And you admit knowing the combination of the safe, too," broke in Applegate. "I didn't know that before. Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't consider it important enough. I had found the combination by accident, and I had no intention of using it. As a matter of fact, I don't think I could remember it accurately right now. I just put the paper back and decided to say nothing about it to save trouble. And yet you come and tell me about it now." "I have nothing to conceal. If I'd taken the money, I wouldn't very likely be telling you now that I knew the combination." "Yes," agreed Mr. Hardy, "that's a point in your favor." "Is it?" asked Applegate. "You're just clever enough to think up a trick like that, Robinson. You think that if you come to me now and admit you knew the combination, I'll believe that you're so honest that you couldn't have committed this robbery. Very clever, but not clever enough. There's enough evidence right here and now to convict you, and I'm not going to delay another minute." There was the sound of a telephone receiver being lifted, and then Applegate's voice continued. "Police station." After a short wait, he went on. "Hello? Police station? This is Applegate speaking." "Applegate. Herd Applegate. Well, I think we've found our man. In that robbery." "Yes, Robinson." You thought so, eh? Well, so did I, but I wasn't sure. He has practically convicted himself by his own story. Yes, I want him arrested. You'll be up right away? Fine. Goodbye. The telephone tinkled. You're not going to have me arrested, Mr. Applegate. Why not? You took the money. But I'm innocent. I swear it. Haven't I always been honest ever since I came to work for you? Have you ever had any fault to find with me? Not until now, returned Applegate grimly. It might have been better to wait a while, suggested Mr. Hardy mildly. Of course, it is entirely in your hands, Mr. Applegate, and I admit the case looks rather bad against Mr. Robinson, but perhaps some more evidence may turn up. What more evidence do we want? The man's guilty. It's as plain as the nose on your face. If he wants to return the rest of the jewels and securities, I'll see what can be done toward having the charge reduced, but that's all. But I can't return them. I didn't take them. I suppose you have them hidden safely away by now, hoping to get them when you get out of penitentiary, eh? It'll be a long time, Robinson, a long time. In the hallway, the boys listened in growing excitement. The case had taken an abrupt and tragic turn. Both the Hardy boys were sorry for their chum Slim, who looked as though he might collapse under the strain. He's innocent, muttered the boy over and over again. I know he's innocent. They can't arrest him. My dad never stole $1 in his life. Frank patted him on the shoulder. Brace up, old chap, he advised. It looks pretty bad now, but your father will be able to clear himself. Never fear. I'll have to tell Mother, stammered Slim. This'll break her heart. And my sisters... Frank and Joe led him down through the hallway and along a corridor that led to a wing of the mansion, where the Robinson family had rooms. There, in a neat but sparsely furnished apartment, they found Mrs. Robinson, a gentle, kindly-faced woman, somewhat lame, who was sitting anxiously in a chair by the window. Her 2 daughters, Paula and Tessie, twins, were by her side, and all looked up in expectation as the lads came in. What news, son? Asked Mrs. Robinson bravely, after she had greeted the Hardy boys. Bad, Mother. They're not arresting him, cried Paula, springing forward. Perry nodded dumbly. But they can't, cried Tessie protestingly. He's innocent. He couldn't do anything like that. He's wrong. Mrs. Robinson began to cry, quite silently. Perry went over to his mother and awkwardly patted her shoulder, his face white and stern. The twins gazed at one another with desperate eyes. Frank and Joe, their hearts too full for utterance, withdrew softly from the room. End of episode. Well, looks like this crime has been solved already. Or was that a little too easy? I'm sure the Hardy boys will keep at it. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll get notified of my updates as soon as they're ready. If you enjoyed this reading or have other classics you'd like to hear, leave me a comment. Check out my other posts on my Substack at ravensview.substack.com. And remember to share this with your friends. Ta-ta for now.